Japan, the land of the rising sun, stretched across the horizon like a living story waiting to be told. It was a place where time seemed to flow in two directions at once, forward into the future and backward into the past. In one moment, glowing skyscrapers lit the night with neon brilliance. In the next, ancient temples stood in quiet dignity beneath drifting cherry blossoms. Travelers from every corner of the world dreamed of seeing it with their own eyes, and year after year, millions arrived, drawn by something they could not quite explain. And yet, behind this open and welcoming face, there was a quieter truth: Japan had not always been this way. Long before the crowds, before the hum of bullet trains and the shimmer of city lights, Japan had lived in silence. It had turned inward, closing itself off from the outside world as if pulling a curtain across its shores. For more than 2 centuries, from the 17th to the 19th centuries, no foreigner could enter, and no Japanese could leave. This was the age of Sakoku, a time that might have seemed empty from the outside, but within, it was anything but still. Life continued, changed, deepened. In that quiet isolation, Japan began to discover itself. Culture blossomed like spring flowers after a long winter. Artists carved beauty into woodblock prints, actors brought stories to life in kabuki theaters, and the delicate ritual of the tea ceremony became a reflection of harmony and discipline. Poetry, philosophy, and craftsmanship reached new heights, shaped not by outside influence, but by careful thought and tradition. The economy strengthened, and society settled into a structured rhythm, each person knowing their place, each role part of a larger design. And yet, even as the years passed peacefully, a question lingered, unspoken but ever-present: how could a nation so closed, so distant from the rest of the world, one day rise to become one of its most powerful and modern forces? To find the answer, the story must travel far back, beyond isolation, beyond samurai and emperors, to a time when Japan was not yet Japan as we know it, but a scattered chain of islands touched only by the earliest footsteps of humanity. Around 40,000 years ago, the first settlers arrived from mainland Asia. They came quietly, carrying with them knowledge: how to grow food, how to shape metal, how to survive. These early people did not know they were laying the foundation of a future nation. They simply lived, adapted, and endured. Over generations, their small communities grew into settlements, and those settlements slowly began to connect. By the 3rd century AD, much of southern Japan had come together under a single authority in the Yamato region. Here, something new was forming: a sense of unity. At the center of it all stood the emperor, a figure seen not just as a ruler, but as a bridge between the human and the divine. As the centuries unfolded, Japan listened to the world beyond its shores, not through open doors, but through distant echoes. From Korea came Buddhism in the year 552, bringing with it new ways of thinking, new art, new beliefs about life and existence. From China came systems of governance, ideas about order and power. In 645, the Taika reforms reshaped the country, building a political structure inspired by the Great Chinese Empire. For a time, the imperial court wandered, moving with each new emperor, as if searching for a place to belong. Then, in 794, Emperor Kemu made a decision that would anchor the nation. He established a permanent capital in Kyoto. And with that, a new era began. The Heian period unfolded like a painting, filled with elegance, poetry, and refined beauty. But even the most beautiful stories carry shadows. Beneath the grace of the court, something was changing. The rulers became distant, their attention turned inward to rituals and intrigue. Beyond the capital, their control weakened. Land and power began to slip into the hands of local elites, and from this shift, a new force emerged: the warriors. These warriors, the samurai, lived by loyalty and discipline. They served powerful clans, and those clans, driven by ambition, began to clash. Among them, the Taira and Minamoto rose above the rest, their rivalry growing until it could no longer be contained. War came. The Genpei War, fought from 1180 to 1185, was not just a conflict, it was a turning point in the story. When the fighting ended, the Minamoto clan stood victorious. Their leader, Minamoto no Yoritamo, did something that would change Japan forever. In 1192, he became shogun, establishing a military government that shifted true power away from the emperor. The age of the shogunate had begun. The emperor remained, but more as a symbol than a ruler. Real authority lay with the shogun and the samurai who carried out his will. Japan had entered a new chapter, one defined by strength, order, and the code of the warrior. But even as the nation reshaped itself, a storm was gathering beyond the sea. In the 13th century, the Mongol Empire, vast and unstoppable, turned its gaze toward Japan. Its leader, Kublai Khan, demanded submission. Japan gave no answer. So the Mongols came. In 1274, their ships appeared on the horizon, their forces overwhelming. The samurai fought with everything they had, but the enemy was strong. And then, as if the heavens themselves had intervened, a great storm rose from the sea. A typhoon tore through the Mongol fleet, destroying it completely. The Japanese would remember it as Kamikaze, the divine wind. 7 years later, the Mongols returned. And once again, the storm came. Japan was saved, but the victory was not without cost. The strain weakened the shogunate, and unrest began to grow. Slowly, the fragile balance of power began to break. Internal conflict returned. Emperors tried to reclaim authority. Clans turned against one another. By the 15th century, the nation had fallen into chaos. The Unin War shattered what remained of central control, and Japan fractured into countless competing states. This was the Warring States period, a time of endless struggle, where alliances shifted like sand and survival depended on strength. Yet even in this age of conflict, change was approaching, carried not by armies, but by chance. In 1543, a storm pushed a Portuguese ship onto Japanese shores. With it came something entirely new: firearms. Muskets spread quickly, changing the nature of war forever. Leaders who adapted gained power. One of them was Oda Nobunaga. Brilliant and relentless, he began to unify the broken land. Though his life ended suddenly in 1582, his dream did not. Toyotomi Hideyoshi carried it forward, bringing Japan together once more. After Hideyoshi's death, conflict flared again, but it was brief. In 1600, at the Battle of Sekigahara, Tokugawa Ieyasu emerged victorious. He established a new shogunate, one that would bring lasting peace. Under Tokugawa rule, Japan entered a long, quiet era. Society stabilized. Culture flourished. But peace came with control. Christianity was banned. Foreign influence was restricted. In 1639, the doors closed once more. For over 2 centuries, Japan lived in isolation, shaping itself in silence. Until one day, the silence was broken. In 1853, American warships arrived, their presence impossible to ignore. They demanded trade. Japan could not resist. The doors opened. What followed was not just change, it was transformation. The old order fell. The emperor returned to power. Japan rushed forward, embracing modern ideas while holding tightly to its identity. In a matter of decades, it rose. From isolation to empire, from conflict to recovery, Japan's story became one of resilience, a nation that bent but never broke, that adapted without losing itself, and that stepped into the modern world stronger than ever before.